Welcome back to The Farm Show here on Westplex Talk 1045. I'm your host, John Combest. 2 weeks ago, we started off B Block by talking about the fact that in previous weeks, we only talked about row crops in the production segment. And 2 weeks ago, we turned B Block into the beef block. Well, we're going to do that again this week. We are joined by Allie Crick, and she is the manager of industry relations at the Missouri Beef Industry Council. Allie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
There's a couple things that I want to get to today. The first is a timely event that's happening just down I-44 from us. And the second one is a little bit longer range program that you all have been working on for a while. But let's start with the event. We have the Stockmanship and Stewardship event coming up in Springfield in just a couple weeks, I think in like a week and a half. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, it is taking place in Springfield, specifically between September 5th and 6th. And we have a couple days full of educational opportunities for our producers through hands-on learning as well as classroom opportunities.
Can you tell us a little bit about big picture, or maybe just with the agenda, if you start on that first day, which I believe the first full day is Friday, some of the programs and some of the speakers you guys will have, and what cattle producers will get a chance to learn?
I absolutely can. One thing before I dive in is I think it's important to note that this entire event is backed by what we call our Beef Quality Assurance Program. So when we set this schedule, we built it off of those principles and what we really believe our cattle producers will relate to within the state of Missouri. But to start off on Friday, our producers technically have the opportunity to join us at about 10 o'clock in the morning. We've set up a hands-on secure beef supply training for our producers to walk through premise maps as well as biosecurity plans in the event, and hopefully not, but to be prepared if a foreign animal disease outbreaks within the United States. That training will conclude at around 2, which will then technically open up our Stockmanship and Stewardship registration. At about 3:30, we'll start off our sessions. The first one being Screwworm. It's on the radar here in Missouri, and we will have somebody from the Missouri State Veterinarian Office here to kind of give a background on that and what they're expecting. About 4:30, so an hour later, we will roll into a session that is about heterosis. Jack Ward from the American Hereford Association will join us for that one. It really backgrounds the economic impact that heterosis can have on your herd. And following that, we will actually have Daniel Clark, all the way from Certified Angus Beef, joining us to talk about the true value of a carcass and how those BQA principles impacts that quality. We are super excited for his session, specifically because he's going to help us break down different meat cuts that you don't traditionally see and or how to make that more economically impactful, considering the beef prices today. Next, we will have a beautiful dinner session, also sponsored by Certified Angus Beef, where we will get to enjoy some fillets while Colin Woodall, the CEO of National Cattlemen's Beef Association, gives us a beautiful keynote speaker. On Saturday, or that will conclude our day on Friday, and we will roll into Saturday pretty early at about 7 a.m., where we will start off registration. And then our first session actually starts at about 7:45. Breakfast will also be provided. I know how much a free meal means these days, so we will start off the first session at 7:45 a.m., and that is called Breeding the Next Generation, where Dr. Jordan Thomas from the University of Missouri will be joining us to go over that with our producers. 8:45, we will roll into Stocking Smart, which is where we will go over breeding and culling decisions with a purpose. And Dr. David Lawman from the Oklahoma State University will be joining us for that session. 10:15, we will roll into a session titled Rooted in Nutrition, where we will unlock the power of forage management with Dr. Eric Bailey from the University of Missouri. And then for our lunch session, we actually have Dr. Ron Gill from Texas A&M, as well as Kurt Pate, joining us to do a hands-on livestock handling demonstration. We're super proud to have them in Missouri, considering that pair is pretty well known for the cattle handling duo in the United States. One significant thing that we're planning on doing is breaking our cattle and getting them used to horseback. So getting those animals used to being around objects that they might not necessarily be used to. That's pretty new and unique when it comes to the traditional stockmanship and stewardship outline. So we're super excited about that. Next, we'll roll into a couple breakout sessions. The first one being led by Jason Duggan from the University of Georgia. He is also their BQA coordinator for the state of Georgia, and Missouri State Highway Patrol will be joining him. But for the trailer to table conversation, where we'll roll into livestock transport, accident response, and foreign material prevention. To roll out the rest of the day, or to finish off the rest of the day, we will have a session titled Administer with Care, where we're going to do chute-side demonstrations of injection sites and implants led by Dr. Julia Herman, who is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association veterinarian, as well as a member from the Missouri State veterinarian team. The cool thing is when we conclude on Saturday evening, all of the attendees will be considered BQA certified. So they will be BQA certified by 4:30 p.m. is the goal on Saturday.
If you're just joining us, we're joined by Crick. She's the manager of industry relations at the Missouri Beef Industry Council. How can folks find more information or take a look at the agenda if they're interested in this?
Absolutely. So we have it linked all over our website, which would be mobeef.com. You can also visit stockmanshipandstewardship.org and find it there as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned New World Screwworm. We played a few clips 2 weeks back from NCBA talking about the threat, and there's also a fantastic piece in the Missouri Beef Cattleman magazine. I know you've seen it before, Allie. It's by another Allie. It's by Allie Francis. And you can find that by going to mocattle.org. We've also played clips in the past from director Chris Chen talking a little bit about screwworm and how the original panic in Missouri turned out to be false. It turned out to be a bit of a hoax, but it seems like folks are getting ready for that. Now, I have to ask a naive question as a guy whose ag background is only in row crops. When you talk about preparing for FAD, is that specifically thinking about New World Screwworm?
It isn't. It is really addressing all of the threats that we can see in the United States. I
Okay,
know
so
that
not just screwworm then. I see.
correct. Yep.
Okay, so that is the Stockmanship and Stewardship event. That main event will be held September 5th through the 6th, correct, in Springfield?
Yes, sir.
And so I want to move into a topic that I think is fascinating, the idea of beef in the classroom. Now, last week we were joined by the Missouri State Fair Franklin County farm family, Havenvale Farms, which is led by Kaylin Beatty. I don't know if Kaylin's husband would like if we said that it's led by her, but Kaylin is one of the leaders of the farm along with her husband, Kevin. Kaylin specifically talked about how in her ag class at Washington Middle School, she pioneered the ag class there. And one of the cool things that they do is they spend some time working on actual butchering, and they make products in their farm to table class, and they give students a hand-on opportunity for butchering. And it got us thinking really about beef in the classroom. And then, Allie, when I was looking through some of your materials and I saw that you were in charge of beef in the classroom, I knew that I had to keep you on the phone for a little bit while longer to ask about that. Can you tell us about the beef in the classroom program?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So our Beef in the Classroom grant program is what we call it. It is designed for FACS teachers, which would be our family and consumer science teachers. It is a grant program where they are required to give a pasture to plate presentation provided by us to their students. We find the importance in that so our students understand where their meat is coming from and they don't just grab it off the grocery shelf without knowing, right? They're also available to request materials from us as a council. A couple examples of those materials would be beef cuts charts, miniature cookbooks, and grilling guides. And after both of those processes, the teachers have the opportunity to apply for reimbursement when they cook with beef in their classroom. So traditionally, our FACS teachers have a built-in kitchen in their classrooms, right? And giving those students the opportunity to cook with beef firsthand isn't always the most economical when you're working on a budget, right? Especially in today. So we want to help take that financial burden off those teachers as well as build that background of beef into those students' lives. The financial side of that, we award up to $400 per semester per classroom. And that is actually a maximum of $2 per student in each of those classrooms per recipe.
That's awesome. What an amazing opportunity for the teachers to be able to get a little bit of help to do that. What are the most popular parts of the program for kids? And the feedback you get, what do kids enjoy the most?
Yeah, I think that being able to cook firsthand with beef is very eye-opening to those students, as well as some of that information that is coming from that pasture to plate presentation. Through that presentation, we actually start with a little bit of beef checkoff knowledge, as well as the entire, let's meet the cattle producer, let's talk about the USDA inspected plants, and then let's talk about the nutritional value of beef. And I honestly think that entire process is very eye-opening to what we would consider specifically our inner city students. They don't get to see that every day, but so that's very eye-opening as well as I mentioned, cooking firsthand with beef. You know, not everybody has the opportunity to grow up in a house where they get to learn to cook with materials that are a little bit more pricey.
One of the surprising things I saw, and I have to admit, I was one of those kids in class that kind of read ahead, Allie. I was one of those annoying kids. But in doing some research for this, I saw in the comparison and some of the materials of just the comparison between, for example, a fat and protein comparison between chicken and beef. And as a guy that's grown up eating both, and I feel like I know a little bit about beef, even I had no idea of the nutritional facts. And I think it's fascinating what kids can learn in a classroom that many of us adults don't even know.
Yes, yes. I actually was teaching the pasture to plate beef in the classroom lesson this morning for a cooking demonstration and seeing some of the light click on in the high school boys' brains that 6.5 tablespoons of peanut butter holds the same nutritional value on the protein level when it comes to just 3 ounces of beef. That was pretty eye-opening to me too.
Wow. I have a feeling a lot of boys are going to be lobbying their mothers when they come home today to get the protein to grow up big and strong. Now, we have a 4 county broadcast area here. We broadcast in the Warren County, Franklin County, St. Charles County, and West St. Louis County. Do you know of any schools in our broadcast area that participate in Beef in the Classroom?
Absolutely. We actually have 8 schools that are pretty consistently participating within our program.
Wow.
A couple of those being both of the Fort Zumwalt schools. Valley Park also participates, as well as Holt High School in Wentzville. Melville, I
Yeah, Melville High
believe.
School.
We also have Timberland High School out of the Wentzville area, and then Webster Grove and Francis Howell participate.
Wow. Now, what I think is impressive about that, Allie, is you have not only a wide geographic base there, but you have, I think it's fair to say, some schools that you would think would be pretty suburban and certainly not near, really not, at least a distance away from a cattle farm. And then you have folks that you might consider a little bit more traditional, closer to agriculture. So that's real diversity in the schools that you have there.
Yes, yes, we are very thankful that our teachers are willing to kind of branch out and reach out to us through that program, no matter where they are in the state.
Where would educators learn more about some of the resources you have or how they could get involved in that program?
Yeah, our resources are available on our website, which would be mobeef.com. If you scroll all the way to the bottom on our homepage, there should be a tab for Beef in the Classroom, or you're more than welcome to reach out to us personally. We are always happy to talk about building beef into communities a little bit more.
That was Allie Crick. She is the manager of industry relations at the Missouri Beef Industry Council. Allie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
In that conversation with Allie, we just mentioned the Missouri Cattlemen's Association most recent magazine. The lead story, the cover story, is on the new World Screwworm. Well, we didn't have time to include this last week, but last Friday, USDA Director Brooke Rollins was down in Texas, which has kind of become the epicenter of this issue, to talk about what the government is doing in partnership with others to keep the New World Screwworm out of the United States. I want to play just a couple minutes of that clip from Secretary Rollins talking about the government's efforts.
We are here in Austin, Texas, to address a serious national security issue and threat. It is a threat to our ranching community, represented by so many of my friends over here to my left, but it is also a threat to our nation, and that threat is the New World Screwworm. The New World Screwworm is a flesh-eating parasite. People think it's actually a worm, but it's not. It's actually a parasite that torments cattle and even the occasional human or household pet. This pest, which was once eradicated in the United States decades ago, has now reemerged dangerously close to our southern border, closest to Texas, but also waging a war with our friends in Arizona and New Mexico as well. Its peril is not just in the cause, but because it endangers the livelihood of our livestock, it endangers our livestock industry, and it threatens the stability of beef prices for consumers across America. That's a dinner table issue, as Governor Abbott mentioned, and one that affects every American home and community, directly affecting the cost of groceries and therefore the cost of living. All Americans should be concerned, but it's certainly Texas and our border and livestock producing states that are on the front lines of this every day. In early July, a detection just 370 miles from Texas sent a clear message. The threat is real and the time to act is now. That's why today we are building on the comprehensive five-pronged plan I announced on June 18th in Edinburgh, alongside Congressman Gonzalez and several others from Washington, to combat the New World Screwworm's northward spread. So far, to date, before today, we have suspended live cattle, horse, and bison imports through U.S. ports of entry along the southern border. We have launched an $8.5 million sterile fly dispersal facility in South Texas, and we have invested about $21 million towards renovating an existing sterile fruit fly production facility in Mexico to produce up to 100 million more sterile flies needed for eradication. That's to date. We've audited Mexico's surveillance program, trapping, and movement. We have held 4 public listening sessions on sterile fly production technology, eradication tools and technologies, and the benefits and barriers of enhanced domestic and international sterile fly production. Much of what we have heard at those listening sessions informed our plan that I will be sharing with you now. Today, we are going even further and taking the most sweeping actions in our country's history to date to stop this pest in its tracks. First, today we are announcing USDA will invest and build a domestic sterile fly production facility in Edinburgh, Texas, which is situated about 20 miles from the southern border and complements the dispersal facility we have already begun production on, with a capacity to produce 300 million sterile screwworm flies per week, and that's how we eradicate the parasite. This facility will triple our current output and eliminate our sole reliance on Panama and Mexico for sterile fly supply, putting America first. It's a tactical move that ensures we are prepared and not just reactive, which is to date what we have really been working through. We will invest, the federal government, up to $750 million on this facility, not an insignificant investment, and it will also create about 300 jobs right here in Texas. Second, we are launching up to $100 million in addition to the $750 million to identify and deploy cutting-edge technologies that can accelerate our response while the construction of the facility is underway. From novel traps and lures to modular sterile fly units, I am calling on the brightest minds in the country to build on our existing tools and help us outpace this pest quickly and in the most innovative way possible. Third, because of the migration of infected wildlife over the U.S. border, keeping in mind, Governor, and those who know this issue well know, back in the 1950s and 60s, we didn't have this population of wildlife in South Texas the way we do now. But we are ramping up the hiring of USDA-employed mounted patrol officers known as the tick riders or the tick crew. I actually went and rode the border with them about a month or two ago, which will be the cornerstone of our surveillance program. The tick riders are mounted on horseback and will provide the first line of defense against a new World Screwworm outbreak along the U.S.-Mexico border. We're also training our beagles of the Beagle Brigade to detect screwworm infections and will be significantly ramping up our border surveillance program with those and others. And finally, because pests don't care where the border is, we are working directly with Mexico, perhaps in a way never seen before. My counterpart, Secretary Julio Bertigay, and I are in contact almost daily on this issue at this point. We are working with Mexico to boost the surveillance training and oversight inside Mexico to ensure real-time tracking and reaction time while the U.S. works to verify Mexico's reported results and to help them improve their systems south of the border.
That was USDA Director Brooke Rollins last Friday, August 15th in Austin, Texas. That audio is brought to us by KSAT in San Antonio. You can find them at KSAT on YouTube. And we are way over time here for B Block. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a close look at the Farm Progress Show, which will be held next week in Decatur, Illinois. We'll get a little bit of a preview from the folks at Farm Progress, and also we will tick through the Missouri companies and organizations who will have a presence at Farm Progress. You are listening to The Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri, right here on Westplex Talk 104.5. We'll be right back.